Recording in progress.
Good evening and welcome to the Standing Committee of Finance, Operations, and Governance. If I could ask the clerk to call the roll.
Vice Chair Biancaria?
Here.
Member Johnson?
Here.
Member Roy?
Here.
Chairperson McCullough?
Here. Our first item on the agenda this evening is GB 2-92.14, which is the quarterly reports, building maintenance updates, and the motion was made by Vice Chair Biancaria at our last meeting to get a detailed cost report on mold remediation from the summer of 2024. So I will open it up to administration on this response.
Thank you, and to the chair. As you just mentioned, as part of our quarterly presentation on facilities projects completed during the summer months, we did talk about some mold that was experienced in several of our schools that we had informed the school committee throughout the summer as that was occurring. If you've been following the news, we know that that this has been a significant issue across school districts, not only across from Cape Cod all the way to Western Mass, but certainly impacted Worcester as well. So we've provided you a report that we completed at the end of September that showed the locations, the schools' locations, and the cost per location for mold remediation. Not only the remediation cost, but the monitoring costs and the air testing costs were applicable. So in total, through the first quarter of the fiscal year, we spent $150,000 on mold remediation and monitoring costs.
Thank you, and I know at the last meeting that you had referenced, ways to hopefully prevent this in the future, but knowing too that with a lot of the change in the way the climate has done, that some of these situations have been a little bit more challenging. So I do appreciate that we're looking at ways at trying to prevent that moving forward, and I will open it up to Vice Chair Biancaria for any questions or comments.
Thank you for the report. I certainly appreciate it, and that was one of my questions. Are we more prepared as we move forward with what occurred to not have it repeated?
Through the chair, so clearly the first issue is the level of humidity in our schools, the amount of rain that's occurring. So that's the first driver. But in terms of our response to that, and I'll defer to either Mr. Eichenen or Mr. Hacker for follow-up, but really what we need to think about is dehumidification in schools or use of, generally this is happening in schools where the air conditioning wasn't running or not available, so running air conditioning. Just ways to mitigate not having the high level of humidity within the schools during the summer months.
That's why I'm asking, because with proper air circulation, that would help the situation, not bring the mold in return. And that's my concern, because I know some of the schools were sealed up and we were working in shifts on teams looking at other schools, while these particular schools might have had their doors closed for 2 weeks in a period of time where there was rain and different kind of weather coming through New England. So I'm just looking at better air circulation so we cannot have this problem. And it doesn't mean it's going to completely go away. It's New England. However, not to have it at the level that we had.
Yep, through the chair. So the facilities department will be proactive and monitor this going into next summer, watching the weather and building conditions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Johnson?
All set, thank you.
Member Roy?
No questions.
All right, so then the motion would be to hold the quarterly report till the next appropriate meeting. Ask the clerk to call the roll. So accept the report and to hold the item.
Vice Chair Biancaria?
Yes.
Member Johnson?
Yes.
Member Roy?
Yes.
Chairperson McCullough?
Yes. The next two items we are taking together are GB 2-294 to review current policy regarding service and support animals in school and make any necessary changes. And then Member Biancaria's item GB 4-38 to request administration provide a report in reference to funding and necessary arrangements to provide therapy dogs at school sites. We had previously approved the service animal policy, but we held the support animal policy until we could get an answer back on Member Biancaria's item, which is GB 4-38 again. So I will open that up to administration for a response.
Through the chair. So with regards to funding necessary for therapy dogs at school sites, certainly that's something the district can consider in the future, but given current budget constraints, it's not something the district can recommend at this time. just early predictions for FY '26, we don't feel that there'll be funding available for next year as well.
Thank you, and I know, I believe the service animal that had been at South, I'm not sure if she's still there, was provided by 365Z Foundation, so I know we've, mentioned that certainly if there are organizations that can help support it, or if it's provided by a staff member, certainly that's something that is an option, but, obviously, we're seeing some positive benefits of the therapy animals, so certainly continuing to look into that. I will open it up to Member Biancaria.
Thank you. Thank you for the information. What would we be looking at as a approximate total of cost to have another dog at a high school?
So again, since 365Z is doing the South High dog,
Right.
we have no cost exposure at all. We don't know what they've paid for the dog, or for food, or for health. We can certainly reach out to 365 to see what they're paying for that dog, and provide that perhaps in what's happening to the school committee for an approximate cost per dog.
I'd like to keep this, if possible, open, because once we look at the price, then I would like to see if we can discuss it as a committee, perhaps to find out what other avenues we could take to perhaps get another dog for either Burncoat, North, whatever, but I just hear such wonderful things. I'd like to pursue it for other schools, and I certainly understand we don't have it presently in our budget under Worcester Public School, but perhaps we can, as a group, come up with some ideas on how we could do this, if that's possible, in agreement to leave it open, and then we can discuss it. If administration would move forward on getting some numbers for us.
Through the chair, we certainly can reach out to 365Z,
Sure.
and the recommendation of the administration would be for either 365Z or other similar groups to fund dogs at Burncoat or the other
Right.
schools. So really, this would not involve Worcester Public Schools in that cost. We certainly can let everybody know what 365 experience was, but for us to expand that program, it would have to be either another dog through 365Z or similar organizations.
Correct, and that's what I'm looking at. I just need some numbers so we can then perhaps have a discussion, if it's possible for administration to contact their immediate person to then get some numbers on what they're spending, what the cost is on that.
And
if
I
possible.
do, pardon me, I do believe actually Burncoat is, they're getting one, and it's being provided by a staff member, so they'll be doing that. So there'll be maybe some information we can get as far as that goes. Well, before I say anything else, Member Johnson?
I have no questions.
Member Roy?
The only thing I want to say is, so the policy, for clarification through the chair, the policy is in place where these animals can be provided if they're privately funded.
So, to Member Roy, we had just held off on the final approval of the policy because Member Biancaria had wanted the information on the cost, but what we can do today is approve the therapy dog policy and hold the item, or get it back in the Friday letter, depending on what the will of the committee is.
Okay, all right. And the other thing I want to say, just as a comment, is that the therapy dogs and service dogs are so important. It's a proven statistic that they lower anxiety, especially in students, and they lower blood pressure in adults and students. So I think it's a great idea if we can pursue it.
Thank you. So then what I will do, if this is agreeable to the committee, is that we vote to approve and file 2-294, which are the policies, but we hold 4-38 to get a response back about the costs, the estimated costs. Is that agreeable to the?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Do we need to hold it? Can we just get it back and?
I think Member Biancaria is asking if we could hold it just so we could have some further discussion potentially about a financial impact. So we can, once we get that back, then we could do that at that point.
To go over.
Yeah, because I was just, I'm sorry, through the chair, to the chair or to the committee, I was just saying, due to Mr. Allen saying that we would not take on any of that cost at all, that it wouldn't be an option, that someone would have to come in privately to do that or whatever. So us discussing the cost overall that would impact the Worcester Public Schools is my new point, I believe, at this point. But that's the only reason why I was saying that. But
Nope, and I understand that as well, if we're,
however
Yeah.
we want to do it.
I
You
think
want it back?
Yeah, we can do it where we've approve and file the first item. We can just hold the one to the next meeting if we have the information by then and have a brief discussion and then file as necessary, if that's agreeable to the board, the committee. Would the clerk please call the roll to approve and file 2-294?
Vice Chair Biancaria.
Yes.
Member Johnson.
Yes.
Member Roy.
Yes.
Chairperson McCullough.
Yes, and then the motion for GB 4-38 is just to get some information back from administration surrounding the costs of therapy dogs at the locations that they are currently or potentially occurring in the Worcester Public Schools, to come back to standing committee for any further discussion or insight. So the motion is to hold until that information is available. So if the clerk could call the roll.
Vice Chair Biancaria.
Yes.
Member Johnson.
Yes.
Member Roy.
Yes.
Chairperson McCullough.
Yes. The next item is GB 3-50, which was the student handbook item that actually has already been approved. So this was an item previously filed by Member Clancy in January of 2023 to review and update, if necessary, the voluntary controlled transfer policy, and that was actually done when we did the student handbook earlier this year. So do any of my colleagues have anything to say about this? No? All right, so then the motion would be to file this item. So if the clerk could call the roll, please.
Vice Chair Biancaria.
Yes.
Member Johnson.
Yes.
Member Roy.
Yes.
Chairperson McCullough.
Yes. The next item we have is CNP 3-12, which is to request approval and funds to refurbish and reopen a student bathroom at Burncoat Middle School to reduce the amount of loss on time on learning. So I will open that up to administration.
Through the chair, so in the backup, the administration is prepared to take a look at what the cost would be for reopening the restrooms in the upper L wing that has been closed since the 1990s. We would expect that project to be at least $300,000 to $500,000 to do, based upon recent restroom renovation projects that we've done. We're not prepared to identify a capital funding source at this time. We want to see how the school progresses in the MSBA pipeline first, and then make an evaluation and determination as part of future year capital budgets. Assuming the school continues into feasibility study with MSBA, this is probably not a project we'd recommend at this time.
Thank you, and I do appreciate that, and certainly, understand the request of the students, but also understand, to the way some of our buildings are set up, that the reason why some of those unfortunately may have been turned into some other spaces were for, the flow of the school day, and, anything that we can do to increase access for students using the bathrooms throughout the day, though, would certainly be great, and I think that's something we could look at, the school level directly, but I certainly would agree, if we're going to be in the place where we're ideally going to be a part of the replacement phase, that, we understand that this might not be the capital project that we would be looking at. So any questions, Member Biancaria?
What is the distance presently that they would recommend this? So what are we looking at? Are they on floor 3 and then they have to go to floor 1, or what are we looking at?
Am I on? Through the chair, the building meets fixture counts for number of students, so that's sort of the prescriptive code that we would follow. The location of the primary bathrooms for students is the lower L wing, so it is on the first floor. It is centrally located for most students in the school, and then we also would have the newly opened ADA bathroom on the upper floor as well. Plus, there are some additional restrooms in the H wing, so it's not like they're the only bathrooms in the school.
Okay.
And they are, I would say that they are centrally located to minimize travel distance.
Okay. Do these students need additional time to get to? Does anyone know if that's one of the reasons why they put this on here?
I almost said through the chair to myself. When the petition was presented, it wasn't so much about an additional time or distance to the bathroom. It was more just having to wait, and sometimes not being able to wait, or needing to get back to class, or sometimes the wait times being somewhat excessive. And I know that was a concern. I will say, when this petition was filed, the additional bathroom that was completed this summer was not in effect. It is an ADA compliant bathroom, but that was not previously there. That is now there.
Okay. So we put in 1, and how many of these does this consist of?
I believe to administration, did this bathroom, I mean, I know it hasn't been open since the 1990s, but was it a 2 or 3 stall?
Through the chair, the bathrooms that were in the upper L wing had what we believe to be around 5 fixtures apiece for both boys and girls. And the boys would have had urinals in there as well, so it was
Okay.
what they call gang bathroom. But those fixtures have been pulled, and the room is being actively, both rooms are being actively used for curriculum storage. So it's not custodial storage, it's actually their active stockpile of textbooks in that room, in those rooms.
But I certainly would not recommend to see the project move forward. I was just trying to get a layout and some other alternative to how we're looking at this without saying no, but no to the request. However, we have some solution to what the issue is. So right now, they have one more that they did not have prior to. Okay. All right. Hopefully, we have a new school. So,
Member Johnson?
No questions.
Member Roy?
Through the chair to administration, is there a way we can get a report on the time frame that it takes for the students? Like, because I remember vividly, because I was so impressed by it, the students had done a movie to present to school committee, and it was about them standing in line, and they put a little comedy into it, but the basic line was it takes too long to get everybody to go from class to the bathroom, especially at lunchtime. Is there any way we can find out through the school administration at Burncoat Middle how long it takes away, like how many minutes are being taken away for them to have to use the restroom?
So what I would ask then, moving forward, if we could file this particular item, but in the motion of getting it back in a Friday letter, to have the middle school administration respond to, you know, exactly what they could see as a solution potentially for right now, and is there a time constraint of getting to the bathroom, or is it simply a waiting in line and what that wait is to get back to the committee? Is that something that would be agreeable to?
Yes.
All right. So if that's agreeable to everyone, then the motion is to file, but to get that information back in a Friday letter. If the clerk could call the roll.
Vice Chair Biancaria?
yes.
Member Johnson?
Yes.
Member Roy?
Yes.
Chairperson McCullough?
Yes. The next item we have is SA 3-3, which is an item filed in 2023 to provide proper funding and resources to organizations, clubs held after school that offer opportunities to students and allow them to become more involved in their school community. Additionally, to promote and urge students and staff to become active participants in said organizations and clubs. To administration.
Through the chair, so as part of our annual resource allocation process, student organizations are part of that. We certainly can remind building principals to identify any expansion of funding to support student organizations and needs as part of the FY26 budget going forward.
Thank you, and I know certainly the clubs and organizations are an important part of school for our students and for our staff, you know, who are part of those organizations, and we continue to kind of evolve and assess each year because the needs do change, and, you know, some years there are heavy interests in one area where not so much in the other, and it can change within a few matters of time. So continuing to make sure people are aware of that within the schools and to look at those allocations are appreciated. So I will pass that on to my colleagues. Member Biancaria, any questions?
No, thank
Member
you.
Johnson?
Yes, through the chair to the administration. I'll be looking to, we could file this, and what I'm thinking is when this comes up at the school committee meeting as one of the things, potentially, well, I guess maybe there's not enough time for that. I'm just wondering, due to the budget this year, how many clubs and organizations within the schools have not been able to be offered this year? And I'm just wondering.
So through the chair, I'm not sure of any at this point sitting here today, but I'll certainly check with the executive directors to see if they know.
Would that be something that, if there is any, when this comes up on the, what would it be, November 10th school committee meeting, that we could just have some type of update on that?
Through the chair.
If there is anything, through the
Yes,
chair.
yes.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Member Roy?
Through the chair to administration, I had the privilege of speaking to the civics classes at Sullivan Middle, and these children came up with some very good questions, and one of the questions was that The buses for after-school activities no longer, was that due to a budget cut? So a lot of children aren't participating because they have no ride home. So that was one of the questions that I had said I'd pursue for this student. Could you just clarify, like, is that because of the budget that we couldn't offer the buses for after school?
Through the chair, no. Schools certainly can reach out to transportation. We were making after-school buses available for secondary programs.
Okay.
So I'm just a little surprised to hear that. That's
Yeah,
all
that
right.
came from a student. So what I'm going to do is talk to their civics teacher and say that I brought this up, and for them to go talk to the office
Certainly.
so they can participate. Thank you very much for clarifying that.
Wonderful. All right, so then the motion is to file, and we'll get that additional potential information back at the November 10th meeting. Clerk, please call the roll.
Member Biancaria?
Yes.
Member Johnson?
Yes.
Member Roy?
Yes.
Chairperson McCullough?
Yes. Our next item is C&P 4-6 by Maria Camerano. There was a request to consider adding bleachers to the North High School softball field. I know that I believe it was Ms. Camerano and her husband, who are grandparents of the softball player at North High, who came and talked a lot about their involvement in the school and, you know, everything that they've been able to do with the students, but also just a simple ask of adding bleachers at the softball field. So I'll open that up to administration.
Through the chair, so the facilities department is actually in the process of obtaining quotes at this time to install metal portable bleachers for the 2025 softball season.
Excellent. Member Biancaria?
Happy to hear it. We'll keep track of it and certainly let us know when we get the quotes in, and we can take a look to see how we can progress in the right direction on this, because they certainly, participation is so important, to see people watching the kids, and everybody's bringing their lawn chairs, which doesn't always work out well on the grass. So, and standing for long periods of time doesn't always work out well for some senior citizens and just the average person. So certainly more than interested in how this goes forward.
Thank you. Member Johnson?
No question.
Member Roy?
The only thing I have to say is, as a softball parent for many, 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 many years, and you bring your lawn chair, like Diana said, like Member Biancaria said, that a lot of times it's not feasible, the ground is uneven, or you park your, you know what, on the grass, which is not comfortable. So I think it's awesome and wonderful if they could get the bleachers, because the children need to know that their parents and extended families can come comfortably, cheer them on, and encourage them to participate. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So what I would ask administration is, if we file this, is this something we could get during a quarterly report?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So then the motion is to file and get that in the quarterly report. If the clerk could call the roll, please.
Vice Chair Biancaria?
Yes.
Member Johnson?
Yes.
Member Roy?
Yes.
Chairperson McCullough?
Yes. Our next item is GB 4-77, to consider revisions to the FY25 building rental rates. And we have a report here from administration that goes over the rates and the charts and comparison. So I will open that up to administration.
Through the chair, so the reason administration is bringing this to the school committee at this point in time is the opening of the new Doherty High School, which made us revisit what the rental rates are, because usually when a new school like this opens, we come forward with a recommendation for building rental rates for that location. After some conversation with administration, we're recommending to include the new Doherty into the new building rates, but also to streamline the rental rates across the district, across each of our high schools. So the base rate has been in existence prior to Worcester Tech opening. And then Worcester Tech opening, we had a standalone rate just for Worcester Tech. Then North opened, there was a separate rate for the use of the facilities at North. Then South opened, separate rates for the use of South. And now Doherty conceivably could have been completely separate rates for the use of Doherty, which makes it very confusing for people looking to rent WPS facilities. The administration is recommending to standardize on the Worcester Tech rate. Worcester Tech, as we all know, has been highly successful in its building rentals over the year. Included in the report shows that they had 924 rentals of their building last year. They generated $333,000 of building rental income. So, so with that, there are two charts that are also included in your backup. The current rates which are listed as the FY24 district building use rates, which you can see a difference between, you can just look at across at the top for auditorium space, and then the FY25 proposed district rates, which is really standardizing on Worcester Tech, except for two examples. The auditorium for North High is lower than the rest because of the size of the North High auditorium is about half of the size of Worcester Tech South in Doherty. And then where Worcester Tech doesn't have a comparable space, then we're using the North High rate as the recommended rate. So it's either adopted to Worcester Tech in 99% of the cases, or the North High rate where a similar space doesn't exist at Worcester Tech. And so with that, we think it'll be much easier for when community groups are looking to rent a space, it's all the same rate. It really just depends on availability versus on the cost. And with that, like I said, Worcester Tech has been very successful, even up to last year, under that rate structure. So with that, we recommend the school committee approve the FY25 rental rates, again, standardized mostly on the Worcester Tech rates.
Thank you, and I really do appreciate the comparison and the background information and some of the explanations around it. You know, it makes sense, obviously, when you're saying that North High's auditorium is a different size, so that rate should be different, but then trying to make things more standardized, so as people are renting, it's more consistent, but then also the breakdown of the rates, you know, district-wide, as well as, you know, somebody might look and say, why would somebody just be renting a classroom? But I know a lot of times when groups come in to do recitals and things like that, sometimes they need to rent a few classroom spaces, so those participating are able to get ready and things like that. So that's why things like are even broken down as far as that goes. So I do not have any specific questions about this because I believe it is explained in the backup, and I do appreciate the work that went into standardizing it and having conversations about it making sense and feasible for people. So I will open it up to Member Biancaria.
For the policy on this, are we looking at nonprofit organizations that would like to come in? Are they still charged a fee?
Through the chair, yes. So there is a different rate for for-profit entities and nonprofit entities. The nonprofit is lower than the for-profit rates, but they are charged a rate.
They are charged a rate. Okay, thank you.
Member Johnson?
I have no questions.
Member Roy?
No questions?
So the motion is to approve and file. If the clerk would call the roll, please.
Vice Chair Biancaria.
Yes.
Member Johnson.
Yes.
Member Roy.
Yes.
Chairperson McCullough.
Yes, and our final item tonight is GB 4-78 to approve the second meal, breakfast, lunch, snack, and adult meal prices for the 24-25 school year. And I will open that up to administration.
Through the chair. So in June, the school committee approved the new student handbook policy on this, and then in August, school committee approved policy EFD on this. The next step of that is actually to approve the second meal rate. Now, let me just explain. So all students, since we're a CEP district, can receive a breakfast, a lunch, a snack, and dinner where appropriate. All the first meals are free. So all students receive. However, DSC administrative directive that was given to us last year is second meals are not reimbursable. So the second meal consumed by the student is not reimbursable, so we have to charge for those. We can't claim those for another reimbursable meal. And so in conversations with DESC, what we've recommended is the minimum price to be charged for breakfast, lunch, and snack. And what is that? So it's we've calculated that amount to be the average cost to prepare a breakfast or a lunch or a snack in those public schools. So we can justify to DESE that we're capturing our costs, but we're not making a profit on a second meal charge. We really don't have any discretion on this. The policies have already been approved that the second meal is to be charged. This is simply stating what the rate will be. After this, what we're doing, we are looking, if you recall, prior to the district being a CEP district, we did have a portal where parents would go on that could put money on the student account for the second meal. It will only be done through that mechanism. There will be no cash exchange at school, and no student will ever be turned away from a meal regardless of what status they are in. So as we did prior to CEP, we work with the students through the school, not through the nutrition department. It's usually handled by the school itself on any issues related to that. That's the next phase of this, is identifying, since we have since we no longer have Sage, we have Infinite Campus, we have a completely different software system for nutrition. So the next piece of this is to integrate a payment module into our Mosaic system with Infinite Campus. We're not there yet. We're just establishing what the second meal paid rate would be. Those rates, just like the building rental rates, have to be approved by the school committee.
Thank you. And I know, that this was a lot that's been looked at by the nutrition department and administration, because the USDA and DESC did come in and kind of look at everything that we're doing and tell us, here's where the areas that you need to adjust are, that are requirements for us. Excuse me. I feel like I'm sneaking. Maybe not. Anyway, sorry about that. But so I know this is something that we had to do. This isn't, just us changing it, but there are regulations that we need to follow that weren't necessarily being followed previously. But, we've been looking at everything, kind of doing our own internal and external audits on everything to be compliant with that. The other thing, to the administration, I know something that has come up before is that one of the things we're also focused on this year with nutrition is the portion size of the first meal maybe have been a little bit different, so that there isn't as much of a need for the second meal in some cases. So I know that was something we were cognizant of. Is that accurate through administration? Through
the chair, and I have Samantha D'Angelo, who's one of the assistant directors of nutrition. But yes, as you've seen with the menu improvements, we are deliberately trying to make the meals more nutrient dense, so the second meal isn't necessary. So as we continue to improve the menu, we hope actually that's the long-term solution, whether through we haven't fully discussed this yet, whether through salad bars or through other opportunities as part of the first meal, that the student actually is completely satisfied through that first meal. There are other legislative changes I would like to see long-term, which is beyond the school committee and beyond us,
Right.
Just given who our students, whether they're unhoused or their low-income status may be their only meals that they're receiving in a day. I think there needs to be a look at that. We've already had a conversation with the Congressman's office on that. That's a long-term reauthorization of the school nutrition bill. But that's, long story short, yes, we're looking to make the first meal more nutrient dense, so a second meal isn't needed.
And I should have said nutrient dense, because the empty calories aren't helping any of us, right? So that definitely makes a lot of sense. But certainly we've just heard so much positive feedback from the students and families this year around nutrition and the offerings. And I think students actually are eating the meals, so you're not really hearing as much about that. I mean, I had my cousin say the other day, my kids don't even want me cooking for them anymore. They just want what's being served at school. So that must be a good thing, because she's a good cook. So, but anyways, I don't have any other questions on this, so I will open it up to Member Biancaria.
I would love to see the prices be less than what they actually are here, because my concern is, you mentioned that there is the availability to have a lunch, a second helping, without having a cost. And the determination of that is by the school staff.
Through the chair, so if we're talking about lunch, we'll use lunch as the example.
Right.
The $275 is a calculation that between nutrition, we have determined to be the average cost to prepare that meal. DSC has essentially said that's the lowest amount that we can charge. So we cannot recommend a lower rate and still survive a DSC audit in the
Right.
future. So I agree with you. We wish that number was much lower, but it's really the lowest price we can establish. We could establish all the way up to the reimbursed rate, which is almost $4.59. We're not recommending that. We're recommending to be the lowest price per meal, which is the $275 for a lunch.
Okay, but there is an opportunity, if there are students who would like to have a second lunch, that if they don't have the $275, that it is available to them. Is
No
that
student will
correct?
be denied a meal.
Okay, so no student is denied a meal. Who determines that? When I say who determines, I'm standing in line, I can't afford a meal, I would like a second meal. Who makes that decision?
The nutrition department will not deny a meal to any student. We, on the back end, will work with the school side, whether it's the principal, wraparound coordinator, or whatever, but in the nutrition line, no student will ever be denied a meal.
Okay. So I'm not going to be in the position of having someone say no to me for a second
You will not be
meal.
denied a meal, and you will not be given an alternate meal either. You'll be given whatever meal you choose.
Okay. And then in the background, it's where it's going to be settled on whether it's $275 for that student.
Again, that's the next
Or-
round of this. This is just establishing the price.
Okay. When's the next round of this?
Well, we have to identify a software program that can collect revenue, because we will not be collecting any money at the register.
Correct.
This will be all done at the back end.
And we don't have a system as of yet?
We have not purchased a system yet, because the old system we used was through Sage.
Right.
It's compatible with Sage. It was
What's
written
the
by.
time frame for all of this to take place?
During this school year, we don't know what the procurement process and integration looks like at this point, but it'll be at some point during this year.
And when do we receive an update for as school committee members on that?
I'm just thinking of whether it's through a quarterly financial report or some appropriate other report, we certainly can provide a report to the school committee.
Okay. So we don't have a system yet, but we're coming up with a price, correct?
Correct. Because we still, even to this day, we have to track second meals.
And
Well-
that's done manually presently?
No, that's done through our POS system.
Okay.
Member Johnson?
No questions.
Member Roy?
I just have a quick comment. I'm just very, very happy to hear that no child who is still hungry will be turned away or made to feel embarrassed if they can't, and I'm glad to hear that that's going to happen because we do have a lot of hungry children out there. So I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think it's important, as Mr. Allen noted, too, it's not an alternate meal, so you won't feel like, everyone's looking and knowing, oh, you only got the sun butter sandwich because you couldn't pay for the...
Unless you choose so.
Unless you choose the sun butter, correct. I mean, there might be someone out there that is, I'm sure there is. No. But so then the motion is to approve and file, and certainly we know administration will come back to us as we work further on the next phases of this. If the clerk could call the roll?
Vice Chair Biancario.
Yes.
Member Johnson.
Yes.
Member Roy.
Yes.
Chairperson McCullough.
Yes, and the next item of business is the motion to adjourn. So if the clerk could call the roll, please.
Vice Chair Biancario.
Yes.
Member Johnson.
Yes.
Member Roy.
Yes.
Chairperson McCullough.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I was like, I missed something?
No, yeah.